we have great pleasure in bringing to you the concept of solid organic waste management. You should be aware that a large amount of organic waste is generated from each household, hospitals, hotels, canteens, mess, and all those places where kitchens are present. As a byproduct of consumption of food in the form of vegetables as well as animal matter, much of the vegetable peel is discarded as garbage and thrown out into dustbins. This garbage accumulates itself, stinking into dustbins, and then are being transported, not disposed, but transported to dumps or landfills where it undergoes just a routine decomposition over a period of time. We bring to you a simple process of recycling this organic waste into fertilizer. The process is simple. We are able to recycle whatever is generated at each household, as well as from what can be generated from canteens or hostels and other places where community recycling pits or individual crates can be used for recycling this garbage into a very rich biological fertilizer. This is done with the help of earthworms. What were considered as lowly creatures by people of yesteryears are today being harnessed for the benefit of mankind for recycling this organic waste into an essential biological fertilizer. In this film, you will see the basic concepts like what earthworms are, their brief anatomy, how they can be used for recycling organic waste into fertilizer, as well as the end uses of both the fertilizer as well as the earthworms. These are soil-dwelling organisms. Division Invertebrata, phylum Annelida, class Oligochaeta. These soil-dwelling organisms are segmented animals with setae distributed over their body. With this basic characteristic feature about their appearance as you can normally see them, we normally emphasize rather on the trophic classification than on their taxonomic listing. Man has classified earthworms into different genera as well as species. This is only for, most probably, for a scientific investigation or a study. But with reference to vermicomposting, vermiculture, and their application in agriculture, it is better to recognize a trophic classification of earthworms. When you walk into a good pasture or an agricultural system, you will come across earthworms living on the surface of the soil. When you start digging the soil, you find a group of earthworms living in the first 30 centimeters of the soil. And then if you go deeper, you again see earthworms living deep in the soil. Well, for colloquial terms, we will call them as surface living, subsurface, and deep living. Scientifically, if you are interested, you can call them as epizoic earthworms, anasic earthworms, and endozoic earthworms. Examples of epizoic earthworms or the surface earthworms are, for your own interest, Perionyx excavatus, Icenia fetida, Euryalus eugenie, Dravida modesta, and there are lots of earthworms which you will find in your own fields. But when we start digging the first 30 centimeters of the surface, we see earthworms belonging to Lampito mauritii or Octochetona serrata or a wide variety of anasic earthworms as in your own soils. Deep burrowing earthworms, we find them in Octochetona thurstoni or Polyferretima elongata. Whatever may be the species of earthworm, it is the surface, the subsurface, and the deep burrowing which characterize any good soil. The question now arises, which are important? Are they the surface worms? Are they the subsurface worms? Or are they the deep burrowing? Nature created all these earthworms for different strata to perform a function. The surface worms are largely interested in eating organic debris in the form of leaf litter and converting them into humus or compost. The deep burrowing worms living deep in the soil, about a meter deep, these worms eat organic soil and produce castings within the soil. They are largely responsible for soil characterization or soil formation. So on one side you have the deep worms which are responsible for soil formation, On the other hand, on the surface you have worms which are acting on leaf litter and dead organic material, converting them into fertilizers or humus. And then you get the middle column or the subsurface worms, which have a very, very efficient and active role to perform. These worms not only act on the litter and convert them into compost, but also incorporate them into the soil. So just by making a compost is not sufficient. The compost which is made on the surface should be made available to the roots of growing plants. So if someone tells you that only the surface worms are important, it's incomplete. If someone tells you that only the anesthetic or the subsurface are important, it is incomplete. It is an association of these two varieties of earthworms living on the surface as well as the subsurface, which contribute to the plant production. The subsurface worms, you find them where the soil surface, the plants having the roots, the zone of soil around the roots forms the rhizosphere, whereas these anesthetic earthworms which burrow into the soil, creating the tubes or burrows, this group or this region is called as a drylosphere. It is the interaction between the rhizosphere and the drylosphere which brings success to the growth of plants. Many people keep questioning as to why vermicompost? When they analyze the vermicompost which is produced or the contribution of castings produced by the earthworms, people question that the nitrogen, phosphate, potash value which is present in the casting is not as high as a chemical fertilizer. Then what is the importance of an earthworm? An earthworm is a natural biological organism. It is a machine by itself.
We will now look at the demonstration of Vermitech in a pit. The pit here measures 6 feet by 3 feet by 1 foot. First, we lay a layer of broken bricks or gravel or pebbles. These broken bricks are spread to a layer to a thickness of about 1.5 to 2 inches. This is followed by a layer of coarse sand. Following this layer of coarse sand should be good sandy loam soil or the soil from where you're going to collect your worms. Spread the soil uniformly. Now you see layer of bricks, layer of sand and a layer of soil. The layer of soil should at least be 6 inches thick. Water the soil. Moisture is important for an earthworm's survival. There should not be water stagnation, neither the soil should be dry. Your own species of earthworms, you find 2 species here, epigeic and anesthetic. They are mixed and inoculated into the soil, into small depressions made by hand. Cover these holes back with soil after the inoculation of earthworms. On top of this, place lumps of cow dung or biogas slurry. This contributes nitrogen for the development of earthworms. Cover the entire unit, that is, the soil with its worms and cow dung with hay. After about 30 days, the hay is decomposed. The worms have multiplied in number. This could easily be verified by just moving the soil when the worm density has increased in number. Once the density has increased and the results are encouraging, garbage from any source, either from domestic units or from hostels or from any other kitchen, can be spread on it as a layer. This layer should not be thicker than 3 to 5 centimeters at a given time. Spread the garbage uniformly. After spreading the garbage, leave it covered with a coconut frond or a palmyra leaf or any jute bag. After about 45 days, you find the compost being formed. It is loose, fluffy, and is of a very pleasant odor. You find still worms over there acting on them. We can even use bones and non-vegetarian food material for decomposition. Here you find a bone which also gets decomposed during the process. Take the compost gradually into a container. It's loose, fluffy material with a very low bulk density. Transfer it on solid ground in the form of a cone in open light. Worms, whichever remain in them, go to the bottom layers, which could be recovered for further inoculation in other pits. This compost is then sieved through a 2 to 2.5 mm sieve. You get soft, sieved compost which is still moist. Moisture is essential for all biological fertilizers. Can be transferred into bags, packed and kept for any length of time. With this compost, you can grow any plant, including teak. Lampetomorrhiae is an anisic variety of earthworm, living subsurface, very efficient in not only converting organic matter into fertilizer, but also creating drylospheres, promoting plant growth. There is slight variation in the positions of openings in the case of different species of earthworms. But if you observe in the case of Lampetomorrhiae, the first region which appears on the body in the anterior-most portion is the prostomium. This is like a lip overhanging the mouth. The mouth is located in the first segment, that is called as the peristomium. Worms are segmented animals, and during maturity characteristically show the presence of a ring-shaped structure in the middle of the body, or preferably in the anterior region of the body, called as the clitellum. Apart from this, you find openings on the mid-dorsal surface of each segment, intersegmental openings, called as the dorsal pores. Coelomic fluid and mucus may be secreted through the dorsal pores. Ventrally, you can characteristically observe openings of the Vermitech-A, as well as the female reproductive openings and the male reproductive openings. As I told you earlier, the position, the size, the shape, the number of these openings will vary in different species of earthworms. The mouth opens into a buccal cavity which continues as a pharynx. This pharynx, through a short esophagus, opens into a gizzard. The gizzard is a very, very efficient organ which helps in the complete maceration of food. So you find that soil, as it passes through, also gets macerated, and we normally observe the characteristic of the soil which comes out as feces from the earthworm is different from the type of soil which the earthworm has actually consumed. Now, the intestine continues behind the gizzard in the form of a straight tube before becoming sacculated after the 14th segment. It is interesting to observe pharyngeal nephridia here, which produce excretory products and pass them into the esophagus or the pharyngeal region. Not only that, the food as it passes through also gets, as it passes through the intestine, it also gets excretory waste from the segments through the meganephridia which are present in each segment. Each nephridium has nephrostomes, a nephrostome, which continues as a tubule and opens into the body of the nephridium. This excretory waste is passed through the septal canals and opens by the septal excretory canal into the alimentary canal. All these nephridia, they collect their excretory waste through the coelomic fluid, pass it into the nephridium, and then send it into the alimentary canal. This has been mentioned over here just to create an awareness in your mind that the cast which is produced by the earthworm cast or the castings, not only contain the undigested waste from the earthworm, but also excretory waste from each segment. And not only that, when the worm burrows through the soil,
It not only contributes these casks which contain nitrogenous waste as well as the waste which is undigested from the alimentary canal, but also coelomic fluid and the mucus which is produced by the earthworm. So this final casting and the earthworm activity in the soil is a contribution of several parameters which are made by the earthworm and not just a feces as produced by other animals. When we say vermiculture, the first question which occurs to many minds is which earthworms to use. There is no earthworm species better than the species which is in your soil. Please do not buy earthworms. The earthworms or castings transferred from one soil to another soil may hatch out, may remain for some days, but when it faces situations, environmental situations of the local habitat, they are not able to survive well. The best earthworm species are available in the respective soils. We have shown you how to collect earthworms, and with the help of your own local varieties of earthworms, you can develop them into many, you can culture them, multiply them and use them for composting as well as in situ cultivation in the case of orchards and estates. Earthworms castings may be available when they may contain cocoons. You really like to see cocoons? We will show you some cocoons of earthworms which you can have a look at cocoons, and these are earthworm cocoons which you can yourself collect from your own soil if you are interested and inoculate, or you can collect them from your own cultures and inoculate them in your own soils. Here you can see cocoons of some species of earthworms. You find the Dravida species, cocoons of Dravida species, cocoons of Perionyx excavatus, cocoons of Lampeter mauritii. They are small bead-like structures or capsules, and here you can find an example of a young one coming out of the cocoon.
மண்புழு வளர்ப்போம், மண் வளம் பெறுவோம், ரசாயன உரத்தை விரட்டுவோம், நோயற்ற வாழ்வு வாழ்வோம்.
വെർമി കമ്പോസ്റ്റ് ചെയ്യുന്നത് വളരെ സുലഭമാണ്. ഇത് എല്ലാവരും നമ്മളുടെ വീട്ടിൽ ചെയ്യാൻ സാധ്യമാണ്. ഇത് നമ്മളുടെ വീട്ടിൽ ഉള്ള കായ്കറി തോൽ പോൽ ഉള്ള കിച്ചൺ വേസ്റ്റ് കൊണ്ട് ചെയ്യാൻ സാധ്യമാണ്.
ಇದು ತುಂಬಾ ಸುಲಭ, ಎಲ್ಲರೂ ಅವರ ಮನೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ಮಾಡಬಹುದು.
వానపాములు లేదా ఎర్రలను ఉపయోగించి వ్యర్థ పదార్థాలను వర్మీ కంపోస్ట్గా లేదా ఎరువుగా మార్చే విధానం చాలా తేలిక. దీన్ని మన ఇంట్లో తయారయ్యే వంటగది కిచెన్ వేస్ట్ ఉపయోగించి మనం ఇంట్లోనే తయారు చేసుకోవచ్చు. ఇది చాలా సులభమైన పద్ధతి.
वर्मी कंपोस्ट बनाने का तरीका इतना आसान है कि इसे घर घर में बनाया जा सकता है. हमारे रोजमर्रा की जिंदगी में जो तरकारियों का इस्तेमाल करते हैं उनके छिलकों से बनाया जा सकता है.
A domestic recycling unit or a vermi bin can be set up in a plastic crate. Holes should be made at the base of the crate to permit seepage of water. A nylon net, if necessary and desirable, can be placed at the base, followed by a layer of broken bricks. This is followed by a layer of coarse sand, followed again by good loamy soil, preferably from where you are going to collect the worms. Moisten this soil and inoculate earthworms, both surface and subsurface varieties. Add little dashes of cow dung here and there on the soil, followed by a layer of hay. Keep watering the pit for about 20 to 25 days. Worms multiply in number, and then add garbage on top of this. An advantage of a domestic pit is compost gets formed even as you continue to add garbage on the top. This compost, sieved, can be transferred in plastic bags and stored. Whenever necessary, this vermicompost can be applied to plants, kitchen gardens, or any other varieties of trees, especially for domestic potted plants.
It's so simple. It's a child's play.
Plant material on reaching the soil surface are subjected to various decomposing agents like microorganisms and other soil animals. Earthworms play a major role in the fragmentation and removal of plant material from the soil surface. In fact, soil with very few earthworms have a well-developed layer of undecomposed organic material on the surface. Earthworms, interestingly, can differentiate between different types of leaves. When given a choice, they show preference to certain types of leaves. It has been observed that earthworms can break down neem leaves as well as eucalyptus leaves. Maybe there may come a time when neem leaves can be used not only for its pesticidal properties but also as a very good compost.
Vermicompost can be used for the crop productions, for example, sugarcane and paddy fields. For sugarcane, we can use vermicompost as such to get very good yield as well as very high quality sugarcane. And then in case of paddy, it is always good to use along with biofertilizers, for example, azolla, azospirillum and phosphobacterium.
The fertilizer, which is produced by the activity of earthworms in recycling of organic waste, is not only rich in macronutrients but also it's rich in plant growth promoters and micronutrients.
We have already seen how organic waste or agro waste can be converted into vermicompost, which is a solid fertilizer. A fertilizer of another equal efficiency is a liquid fertilizer prepared with the help of earthworms. It's called as the vermi wash. How do we go about preparing this vermi wash? We just take an empty barrel whose one side is open, and at the base you make a small hole to introduce a pipe. This pipe has a T-joint at the base with a dummy closure at one end and a tap on the other. This dummy closure is essential because when it gets clogged or blocked, it can be opened and the pipe can be cleaned. The whole setup is mounted on a raised platform on either sides to facilitate collection of this water through a tap into a pot. The base of the barrel, to a height of about 10 inches, is filled up with broken gravel or broken bricks or blue metal or pebbles. This is followed by a layer of coarse sand to a height of about 6 to 8 inches. Above this is filled up with good loamy soil. Preferably if you are going to use Lampeter mauritii, it is better to use sandy loam soil. Inoculate earthworms into them, put little bit of cow dung on the surface, cover it up with hay. Keep watering. These earthworms make burrows in the soil, and as I already told you, these are the drylospheres which are made in the soil. Close the tap, add about a liter of water initially. The water percolates through the soil and gets collected at the base after filtering through the coarse sand and the gravel. The next morning, open the tap, collect the vermi wash, close the tap and start adding water again. This water which is being added is better to add about 5 liters of water for a 200 liter barrel. 5 liters of water a day for a 200 liter barrel. This should be added gradually on the surface, keeping the tap closed. The water percolates through the soil column, goes into the sand and the gravel and is collected at the base. The next morning, the vermi wash is collected, preferably diluted with water and sprayed on foliage. This is an excellent foliar spray, especially very good in the case of ornamental lawns, orchids and other plants including vegetables.
Earthworms from ancient times have been regarded as friends of the farmers. The great philosopher Aristotle called them as intestines of earth. These silent soil dwellers, by their presence, alter the structure of the soil and thereby produce soil fertility. Wastelands, including sands, can be converted into fertile and plant-supporting soils with the help of these earthworms, especially the indigenous varieties.
Both vermicompost and vermi wash are very useful in producing ornamental lawns in the field of horticulture.
Vermicompost and vermi wash are in themselves organic manures with no ill effect on the soil. Similarly, chemical pesticides can be replaced by biocides like neem leaf extracts, neem kernel extracts, garlic extract, nochi extract, etc. These effects can be enhanced by using cow's urine, which also has pesticidal effect.
Earthworms, so beautiful, wonderful and lovely creatures. It's amazing to know that they have played a wonderful part even in the history of medicine. Now let me tell you something very interesting. Like, they have been used as a cure for a various range of diseases, right from postpartum weakness, pyorrhea, jaundice and rheumatism. Recently it has also been reported that it has a very good anti-inflammatory as well as fibrinolytic activity too.
What earthworms can do and what they have done for years together in this world. As I very often say, the dinosaurs came in this world several million years ago, about 71 million years ago. They were declared unfit for this world and they vanished. The worms have been living in this world for 160 million years, serving humanity, serving nature, producing forests with the help of their own compost. So we have overlooked the importance of this small organism. Let us now, it's time, after having poisoned our soils, destroyed soil with its life, the soils are dying. It is time that man realizes his mistakes and then reverts back to the original practices of reviving the soil with life. Inoculate earthworms in your soils, do vermicomposting, use vermiwash. Doing it is very simple, as you have seen. The requirements are available in every place. What we require is just brick, sand, soil, earthworms, cow dung, little bit of cow dung, hay and organic inputs. You can do it in a pit, you can do it in a tank, you can do it in any container, you can do it in a crate, you can even do it in a small bucket or an apple case. What requires is your motivation, and if you are interested, we all can change back this world into something wonderful, into something green. We also save our Mother Earth and revive life into this soil, promoting vegetation, so that when we go back from this world, we leave behind a legacy for our children to enjoy and be happy.